we are talking about omnichannel pricing and promotions. On the surface, this feels like a commercial topic: discounts, offers, campaigns. But the more retailers expand across web, app, physical stores, and marketplace, the more it becomes an architectural issue. And with 60% of shoppers willing to abandon their purchase over inconsistent pricing, this is no longer a minor friction point. To unpack how retailers should think about omnichannel pricing and promotions, I'm joined here today by Ruchika Arya, Group Product Manager, Flipkart Commerce Cloud. She has intense experience in pricing strategy and enterprise commerce transformation. Thank you, Ruchika, for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, Ajita, for having me. I think it's a very interesting topic that you guys have picked up because it's one of the hardest to get right. And in the world where online and offline are merging together, getting your Omni strategy right for pricing is extremely critical for all retailers. I'm excited to share some insights with you and go through this conversation together with you. So, yeah, let's get started.
Awesome. I am already ready and pumped up for my first question.
Sure.
So here we go.
Yeah.
Many retailers think of pricing and promotion as two very separate layers: base pricing on one side and marketing led promotions on the other side.
Correct.
But how does this separation actually break in practice?
See, Ajita, the price that you see is not just one number, right? Behind the scene, there are so many distributed systems working together, so many small minds working together to get you that one number that you see, right? So there are pricing systems, and there are retail systems defining your margins, vendors defining the sponsorship of your offers, which play through the promotion engine, right? And then there are these loyalty constructs playing out in the cart checkout when you're trying to make that value creation happen for your users. So eventually, it's a lot of distributed minds coming together and trying to give you that one precise output of pricing that will make you convert, right? Which is the value indicator of your platform. So this is like different teams, different systems, taking decisions, different time, and coming together for the final answer. So the complexity lies in bringing all of these distributed minds to come together at one answer, which is coherent and more deterministic, right? So by that, I would say it's like a high velocity chaos, right? Where everybody is trying to do the best in capacity that they know. The pricing wants to offer the best price. Promotion wants to offer the best price offer for you, right? Loyalty wants to give you as much coins or value and points that you want, right? And amalgamation of all this should translate to one data point. And that's where the complexity lies. But I would say that today's landscape of pricing and promotion is not oriented to handle this complexity. They are designed for handling a sequential and a static flow of information. Wherever these decisions, these systems are taking these decisions independently in their worlds, right? So we need one sort of, not static, I would say, one central mind which consumes all these systems at real time at scale to get you that final outcome, right? Which is, once it's determined, it's coherent across all the systems. So imagine that you're standing in an offline store and you're trying to find the prices on your app and you're trying to apply the promotion on the go. All these is happening real time. So in the world of that complexity, we have to have a solution, the one that we develop, which have the expertise to solve these stacking rules for you and get you that final value in real time, which delight your customer and make that transaction happen in time. Right. So that's how I see this pricing and promotion evolving, and that is where we are constantly investing on our platforms in FCC's world.
That's really great to know, because if these two do not talk to each other, then
Yeah.
we see something where there's a lot of latencies are
Correct.
there,
Correct.
and we see prices being very different on two different platforms. So
Correct.
that kind of hurts customer
Sentiments. I
yeah?
agree. I agree. Yeah.
So Ruchika, you explained how at online level, right? If your systems are not synced at pricing and promotion, it can create that kind of complication.
Yeah.
But what if we go omni-channel with this?
Oh my
right?
God. Yes.
So what
Interesting.
happens in a case where an enterprise or a business is omni-channel?
Further complicates the situation because you are adding more channel complexity. You are adding more decision locks to the whole ecosystem. And with that, I think, as I said, right, it's a distributed ecosystem usually, and everybody has optimized, or every system, I would say, or every channel to be precise, has optimized their own logics to operate, to solve for the latencies in serving, to solve for customer experience. For example, your pricing promotion would have some pre-formatted data so that they can act on it faster. Your mobile app would have some pre-caching of data to serve the users, because you don't want to show him or her a loader, right? A store would have a frequent synchronization with your system to get the data in time, right? And also there is loyalty systems which have their own logic, own frequency running. So in the world where this is all distributed, imagine a complexity of a channel which has its own challenge of network speed, if its own infra latencies, its own infra complexities, right? So you have more touch points to deal with you. And in that word, I would say there is more interpretation drift that can happen in the systems. And what can happen is that you are, while on online, you are able to enjoy that benefit of the offer because it's almost real time for you, but it has taken some time for it to get into your POS system for you to enjoy that benefit, even if that coupon is created right in front of you, right? And that's where the customers lose the patience, right? And not the one who's acting on the POS, the one in the queue as well, right? And every second extra spent can cost you a conversion. So that's why all these systems have to solve for these inconsistencies by having a more centralized, not just centralized, but fast enough system so that they all are in sync. Or rather, have a centralized service like we have at FCC. So, how we tackle these problems is we have an API led interfaces, right? So that the source of information is one, and the demand systems can fetch the data and serve it as per their speed or their environment realities. And that helps us get into this, minimize this problem to a very, very unobservational time spans. So I would say it's very important that you look out for these signals when you are working on operating in omni-channel setup, and when your legacy systems become a lot more challenging. A new age middleware or API first solutions like we have at FCC will help you get the return on the investment for these solutions. I think while omni-channel is extremely complex, but it's a solvable problem. It's harder with the legacy stack. It's easier with the modern tech. Yeah.
Yeah, so it makes absolute
Yes.
sense, right? So if I am omni-channel,
Yeah.
and I have like promotions and pricing and loyalties and all of them tied up, I need it to serve exactly similarly to my customer online and offline.
Correct.
With the same speed, right?
Yes.
So I need to have a system which solves it
Yeah.
on the go.
Correct.
Right? So
100%.
so
Yes.
that's what the customer is asking for today, and their
Yeah.
expectation is today.
Correct.
And if you are a retailer who's not matching that, someone else will.
100%.
Right?
100%.
So you
Yeah,
have
it's
to
a race
be.
at the end of the day. And you want to be at the front of it rather than following the leaders, because then you're losing margins, you're losing GMV, you're losing your revenue, and you're losing your next customer.
Yeah, makes sense. So, Ruchika, so far we have looked at this problem from the lens of systems and execution, but ultimately pricing and promotion impact revenue and margins. So, when executives have to see it from a leadership angle, what are the things they should look for in the maturity of pricing and promotion engine, and what is it that they would want out of it?
Yeah. See, it all boils down to higher revenue, higher margins, right? And the tool to get there is definitely pricing and promotion. As I would see it, it's sort of a governance infrastructure, right? Your pricing promotion has a direct implication on your financials, right? And your financial modeling relies on, predictability, deterministic. If your outcome is unpredictable, or it's hard to predict rather, it introduces variability at the design of these models also, and that's why it gets harder to price your product from the business planning perspective also. So at FCC we see it like a amalgamation of a configuration and an architecture investment, right? When I say configuration, it's the ability to, in a self-serve manner, being able to launch promotions or price changes at scale, right? But then when you're talking architectural dependency or investment, it has to be that it's resilient. It has to be that it's able to handle the peak loads. It also should be able to handle a newer use cases that probably you have not planned before, or a newer formats of promotion for that. The agility to grow in that direction. And eventually because we did talk about financials, right? Eventually you should be able to go to the depth of how your offer engines are attributed across items when you're purchasing, right? Because there's one offer getting attributed to multi line and multi units in your cart. I should be able to make sense of what part of that offer needs to be sponsored by which item to what level, right? So the right level of reporting is also highly critical when we are talking about from the leadership visibility, right? That's why if your margins are in check, that's why what is your variance to operate and play with the pricing and promotions. So in light of that, I would say when a leader is evaluating any pricing and promotion, right, they should think about if they are able to simulate their business logic in the tool, right, in the pricing and promotion. They should be able to model all their business logics through rule configurations or through the consoles to design it or to act it in a fashion that they want, which is what we referred as explicit encoding of the business domain, not understanding. And finally being able to resolve millions of these promotion applications at scale, right, and without impacting user experience negatively, right, keeping the latencies in check, being performant across multi dimensions, not just one, right? And obviously we don't want it to have a manual oversight, right? If I have to deploy as many people to support that tool, then again, as we said, you are taking a trade off, right? Your tool is not doing the job it's deployed to do. And to be telling you the last thing, I would say being able to, for degradation scenario, being able to set the rules for those use cases and setups, so that in cases of conflicts or in cases of your system not knowing, it doesn't do something that can impact your users negatively. Rather, it takes the logs, and then being able to present that information so that business folks can act on it quickly to make that a workflow to cover larger use cases for future scenarios. So at the end of the day, you need to know if your platform is centralized, if your platform is resilient, if your platform can is predictable and can handle the load in the happy and the negative scenarios both. Yeah, right. So yeah, I think if there's a leader who's evaluating a pricing and promotion engine for their setup, these pivots will be highly critical to evaluate across.
So if they want their margins and GMVs, they have to be absolutely sure about all the things that you spoke about are in place, so that they're able to predict the outcomes of the business decisions they
Correct.
take, right? They should have
Correct.
that kind of confidence in the product
Yeah.
to be able to then leverage it for the strategy they're thinking for the business. Yeah. Ruchika, now that you have told me this, what concerns me is that in enterprise scale, when we work with a lot of clients or we talk to a lot of prospective clients, what could be the first warning signs which tells us that they're not ready for omni-channel scale up with pricing and promotions?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, right? So when you're operating at an enterprise, the demands are different, right? So I would bucket it into 3 or 4 points, right? I would start if your system requires too many manual overrides or checkpoints, that's an early sign, right? That means you are overcompensating for your system architecture inconsistency or it not doing its job. So that's definitely one sign, I would say. Another that is very common, Ajita, is the inconsistent price that you see across multiple touch points, right? As I said in the previous discussion point, that there are a lot of minds coming together to deliver you that, right? So if it's a distributed world and you don't have a centralized service, you will see different price points emerging at different journey of the user, even in the same channel for that matter. Having an online and offline is one conversation, but across the touch points of online itself, it could be not consistent if it's not done well. So that I would say is another red sign that your pricing promotion solution is not adapt for omni-channel enterprise. And the last thing I would say is the hesitancy to use promotion engines, right? And when does that happen? When your systems are not deterministic or predictable, right? Because there is so much of complexity when in the stacking rules, in applying the segmentations, in applying these rules, there still has to be predictability of the outcome, right? Otherwise, there'll be always this hesitancy in the sales team or in your retailer side to adopt to your engine, because they'll not know what will come out if they adopt or if they participate in certain pricing or promotion campaigns, right? In addition to that, it also creates problem in your financial sides, right? Because pricing promotion is where all the auditing happens eventually. Yeah, your books have to reconcile, right? But if your modeled output is not meeting your exact output, it's a problem, right? And it's a problem which is post facto and you cannot go and correct it, right? So having these real time vision or visual layers in the system which helps you figure out this at an enterprise scale is important. And having the centralized service which solves for these inconsistency, which overrides, gets you out of these manual override loops, is very very important when you're talking enterprise, right? Otherwise there'll always be these things popping up and you'll always be in the management of the issues rather than optimizing for your business growth,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
that's important.
Yeah, it makes absolute sense because at an enterprise scale, I am already gunning for scale, right?
Yes.
So in that, if I have too many manual overrides to look into,
Correct.
then I'm actually against my goal.
Yes,
Yeah, so
yes,
it
yes.
makes absolute sense to have
Yeah.
something which is so seamless. Yeah. So Ruchika, whatever you've told me till now,
Mhm.
I feel that legacy systems are a structural issue these days, right? Now, when we talk about like architecturally fit pricing and promotion systems, what is it that the enterprises or the retailers need to do differently now?
Yeah, I think it's a very loaded question, but I would try to see if I can answer it more simplistically. See, as you would have picked up, it's a world of distributed systems and that can create inconsistency. So I would say there has to be a consolidation of this decision logic overall, right? I think the first, it should not be seen as a sequential flow, a chained flow. It should be evaluation of one pricing output in a go as one execution cycle, as we call it at FCC, right? So that all for evaluating that one price point, you're going through and figuring out all the logics that needs to be evaluated to get you that answer. So I think that's very very important, rather than taking input from one system and putting it in the other and then that engine starts working. So that's important. And then secondly, I would say it has to have a predictability, as I said, so that all your rules, right, your business logic should be encoded, and they should be explicitly encoded. What do I mean by that, right? When I am evaluating this on a go as a system, I should not think of it as a pricing SOP. I should think of it as a platform, so that everything is clearly laid out in terms of rules, in terms of overrides, in terms of stackability. If my loyalty needs to be governed first over markdown logics, if my certain offers of cart needs to be evaluated versus listing price or vice versa, whatever your business logic be, your system should have that explicitly encoded so that there's precise predictability of the outcome. And this then gets you into the third bucket where, in terms of the conflicts, right, in terms of a new discoveries in a system, your system should be able to proactively handle it. What do I mean by that? I would say that it should be able to filter out certain new or complicated or conflicted scenarios, so that a business, if it's human or if it's whatever your business setup is, it gets into that loop rather than making it live, right, and impacting your users or probably hitting your bottom line negatively, right? So your conflicts needs to be resolved, but it needs to be resolved proactively by right identification and putting in the right workflow, right? And finally, I would say resilience, because all it comes down to how are your systems performing in the peak setups, right? As we said, latency needs to be within check, your conflicts needs to be within check, and also your system should know what is the rollback state of your safe state, right? In case that you are not able to scale to the level you want, your system should degrade gracefully, right? Your system should not create things that could hamper your business or your customer sentiments, but rather be very, as we call it, beautiful degradation of the experience, so that everybody knows what's happening, including your customer. So given that if you invest in all of these four levers that I just spoke, it can amp up your campaign velocity without impacting or introducing any instability in the stack. So yeah, That's how I would see it, and that's how I would invest as a retailer when I'm thinking the pricing and promotions of tomorrow.
Yeah, actually, it absolutely makes sense. If I
Yeah.
have no latency, absolute predictability,
Yeah.
guardrails and conflict resolutions
Yeah.
marked to specific people or systems,
Correct.
right? So I am much more empowered and obviously a safe ground to come back to, which the system understands.
Correct.
Then I feel very safe as
Yeah.
a retailer or a decision maker to trust the platform and grow with it, right?
100%. Yes.
So your confidence in the platform also increases if you have all of these
Correct.
parameters
Correct.
rightly fit in your
I
system.
think we would say that your retailers can sleep peacefully
Yes,
when system
yes.
is doing its job and there's predictability and there's it knows even in the state of conflicts or in states of the downgrades, it knows how to manage it. I think then the retailers can sleep peacefully.
Yeah. Okay, Ruchika, we discussed about the enterprises and
Yeah.
what really matters to them. But when now I think about the times when people have traffic spikes, which is could be during their promotional events or during
Correct.
festive sales, right? Now, if I have a legacy stack, what really breaks for me, which is the most weakest link that could break for me during that time?
I think that's an interesting question, Ajita, right? So, as we spoke, when your tech is not built for scale, it will show. And the highest show time is when your sales and peak events happen. In your legacy systems, every system is doing its own thing, right? And as a rule of supply chain, right, your outcome is defined by the slowest system in processing, right? That becomes the outcome or the speed of the process. So if there is a pricing system who's defining price separately, there's a promotion engine which works at its own scale and velocity, and there's coupons and loyalty which is getting applied and evaluated in checkout, predictability goes for a toss, right? Because it's everything distributed. So I would say that your systems get really tested under these peak events, and things that work very naturally, unidentified in a day-to-day basis on a normal scale gets exposed in the peak season, right? Because sequential doesn't cut it, right? There are a lot of decisions which are happening on the go, and once those inputs starts coming in at different point in time, your sequentiality of your system start defining the outcome, right? And as a outcome, the predictability, as I said, goes for a toss, and because of that, your latency can increase. Yeah, your caching layers can start acting out, right? And some rules written somewhere might kick in time, might not kick in time, and as a result, you could see different prices on product page, different prices on checkout, different cart experiences, although the cart dynamics are same. So there's a trust that gets challenged from the customer point of view. Am I seeing the right thing? Is your system reliable enough? Should I make a payment? So there's this hesitant customer sentiment that you introduce when there is no synchronous and consistent price point discovery in the journey as a result of your legacy stack, right? So it's very important that you watch out for these things early on so that they don't break you when you need these systems to really depend upon.
Yeah,
right?
that's very interesting because what we do festive sales to increase sales,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
So all those pricing and promotions we do so that at that particular point of
Yeah.
time when the customer demand is also high, you get the benefit of sales
Correct.
on your platform. Now, if the latency increases or you see different price point, it definitely creates a hesitation on a customer mind. And
100%.
if you're definitely a very heavy online first channel, then you are actually creating a lot of negative customer sentiment for
Correct.
BAU as well, right?
Correct.
So it sounds like a customer crime to me. Online
It's
level.
very, very deadly.
Yeah.
It's very deadly, yes.
For answering so many questions, I am at the last question of the podcast now.
Okay.
And with that, what is that one last thing you would like to leave our audience with from today's podcast?
Okay. I think this world of promotions is evolving very fast. There are multi formats which are coming. So while we spoke about it being resilient and it being able to be predictable, being able to serve at scale and all, one thing which is also important is that they are agile enough to absorb these new formats, right? Which business would demand. So the extensibility to absorb the new formats and to absorb the complexity of the evaluation rules and still being able to simply being able to explain how that output had come out as a function of these multitudes of dimensions is very important. So if that's I think that will be the last thing I would say, right? When you're evaluating, just don't think about the present. Think how will this tool help you in the future when you're trying to change, when you're trying to adopt. Will it adopt with you with the speed that you want so that your business doesn't suffer? So yeah, that will be very important given that it's a world of AI and world is changing very fast.
Yeah.
So how do your stack absorb these foundational changes in the world of tech development is very, very critical, Ajita. Yeah.
So what we are saying is that build for scale and build for billions, as our podcast is called.
Yes.
So that is what we are telling our retailers to do when you're evaluating a pricing and promotions.
100%. Yeah.